everybody. Welcome back to another Relationship Wednesday, where again it's all things relationships. Again, we're talking about overall our goal is to help us find ways to manage our relationships better. And so, just kicking off is going to be myself today and next week. I just want to take this time to really talk about in dealing with relationships. I've been giving some thought on what could I share that could really help us move forward. And one of the things that let me back up. I wanted to also share when I first got started with Relationship Wednesday. My thought process was I wanted to talk about or focus on how to recover uh, from bad situations or hurtful situations or situations where I thought it should have went. That's why I had called it After I Did, because I was really and I just didn't want it to come off like we're the problem. So I was trying to come up with a better name for it. We call it relationship management, but the main focus was of Relationship Wednesdays, in my opinion, is that because I see so many people online where it's all about people who gone through stuff, but I just don't think that we're taking a healthy or biblical approach in recovery and restoration. And so, anytime we go through things in life, it's all, a lot of times going to be connected to a relationship. And so, usually a computer don't hurt us, a job don't hurt us per se. A lot of times, it's the people on the jobs or it's the people connected to the things. So, people say, again, a church builder don't hurt nobody. Say, I don't want to go to church, but the church builder didn't do anything to you. It was the people at the church that you feel hurt by. So a lot of times, most of our hurts are going to be connected to relationships. And so because of that, I have to just really talk about that. And this is what I wanted to really share today is how in all of us in living life, we're going to have to deal with hurts in some form or facet, meaning that if you live long enough, you will be betrayed. You will be disappointed. You will be let down. You will feel rejected by somebody you care about. Like all of those things happen. And I just think that a lot of times we don't do a good job in understanding how to recover from those things and learning how to manage those situations because usually the ones it hurts the most because it's the people we put the most investment into or the people we trusted the most or the people we cared about the most. Usually those are the ones that really tag us good. It's not random people that betray us or somebody on social media that we may not know too well. Usually the ones that really alter our perspective of how we're going to handle future relationships usually come from people that are closest to us, usually people that we invited into our inner circle and that we trusted the most. Like those are the ones that we have to work through the most. And I just think that sometimes what happens is as we listen to a lot of people out there in the world, they they're giving us more of a bitter approach on how to recover and how to just um, pretty much deal with our future relationships from a position of bitterness, but not from a position of of love and a position of just of being healthy or whatever, in the sense of God's way of looking at things. And so that's what I wanted to talk about these next couple of weeks. Just really some key points on how do we recover from people that are closest to us by where we have the temptation to be bitter. Because, and that's what I want to talk about. Is like the root of bitterness, the understanding of unforgiveness. And we all talk about that, but now I want to talk about what are some ways we can actually work through that. Like, how do we actually work through people who've actually hurt us and who've done us wrong, and where I can now have the confidence that I can trust somebody else again. Because I think that a lot of times we'll still have relationships or friendships, but we may never trust somebody else ever again because the scary part is and the reason why we think that because I never thought you would do this to me. So now how do I even know how to trust somebody else who I don't even know where I didn't even see them coming? So because it could be a day where you're great, but I don't know what could change, a year from now or 5 years from now. And so we're now and I share all my personal information with you, and then the thing I share, you use it against me, you turn on me, and it's so hurtful. And so all of those type of things. And so I just think that um, the world has its way. Now, also I want to preface by saying that we want to handle it God's way. So meaning that the first thing, in order to really handle it the right way, we got to have the love of God working in us. In other words, there's no way we can recover properly without the love of God. Because, man's love is eye for an eye. In other words, you do something to me, I'm gonna do something to you. Uh, don't judge me, but I like watching movies, and most movies are all about get back. Like that's how we're entertained. You killed off my mother, I'm coming for you. You killed off my friend, I'm coming for you. Like you took my child, I'm coming for you. Everything is all about get back. In other words, get back is how a lot of times we're entertained without any sense of watching somebody get back at somebody. It's like there's really nothing to watch in a sense because it's like they use that to entertain us and how they drive the script. And I'm saying that we gotta be careful with that in the sense of where it's so cultured to where now that's how I live. Everything is you did me dirty, so I'm going to get back at you. Like even reality shows, they use beefs as entertainment. You said this about me, get back. Because again, if we would say, man, they talk about, I'm just going to let it go and I forgive them, there probably won't be no show. There'd be no ratings because there'd be nothing to really talk about. No get backs because that's what I'm saying where somebody do something, they coming for them, and everything's all about a get back where it's just all of those type of things. So the world's way is all about eye for an eye. We grow up learning that if you do this to me, I'm doing this to you. But in our case, sometimes if you can't get the person back that hurt you, usually you'll make the new person pay for what the last person did. So if the last person hurt you, the new people got to jump through all these hula hoops. So I remember sometimes where in ministry, for you to help certain people, you have to build trust. And sometimes what happens is because all they've known is people who hurt them over and over again, then I'm going through all these hula hoops and all these tests just to qualify. So I'm not even helping you yet. I'm just going through all these tests just to even, in their mind, believe that I'm trustworthy enough to even help them. And so now it's like you're shut down from even getting the right help or even just having good relationships because I'm so big. I'm so much testing everybody that I'm not even having. My relationship now is about testing people and this and that question and all of that. And it's just real no freedom in that. It's no freedom. And so because it's all about me making sure somebody else paid for what the last person did. And usually the test comes in the form of I'm gonna treat you this way and see if you're gonna stay here. So in other words, these people treated me like crap. They didn't do this. So now I'm gonna go and treat other people like crap. And the ones who actually stay and take my wrath, those are the ones I know who care. But then I found out that even when you do that, some people still it's not good enough. It's like it's still another thing, and it's another thing, and it's another thing, and you're on this cycle. And so where now it's a place where your yesterday is driving your tomorrow, and the more people I work in relationships and moving forward, it's when I'm trying to help people work through their relationships or work through their tomorrow, it's never the present stuff we're talking about. It's always what happened yesterday that's driving how we're handling today or how we can move forward into our tomorrow. And I guess I'm just driving the importance of I think that sometimes if we don't deal with our yesterday the right way, then we'll always find ourselves trying to move forward, but we keep throwing up in a bad way our yesterday to keep talking about our tomorrow. So like myself, I just went through a hardcore. I'm big on I believe God's a God of investor. I'm big on investing. And I've worked with some companies where I've invested money and put my time into, just to find out that they either shut down or they doing shady stuff to scam you and all that kind of stuff. So now it'd be like a thing where I could use that to drive my tomorrow's decisions where I don't want to invest anymore or every company is shady and this and that, whatever. And so now I got to figure out how do I maintain hope that I can work with a reputable company when it seems like I've been following the pattern of companies and people that seem to keep trying to take advantage. And that's where I feel like a lot of us in relationships where we deal with people and we feel like we've been taken advantage over and over again. But then now I want to have healthy relationships, but I'm working through this repeated reality of just a different company, same situation. Different company, same situation. And then where now I got to come to a place. How do I don't let what happened take over my tomorrow, meaning it controls my imagination. Because remember that we dream from two places: our imagination and our memories. So your tomorrow is always going to be in your imagination, but if your memories are contaminated and your memories basically infect your imagination, then there is no tomorrow, because your tomorrow's been affected by your memory. So you gotta look at it like, it just come to mind like a spoiled fruit. And it's so wild that it happens. You can have one spoiled fruit in the thing, and if it's connected to the good fruit, it can grow onto the good fruit. So I'm saying when your memories are infected, it can, I guess, damage. Then it can infect your imagination and tarnish it like that spoiled fruit. So if your memory's been spoiled, then it can spoil your imagination where your tomorrow lives. And I just think that what's happening with a lot of people is we are trying to work through a tomorrow. We're trying to create it. And let me say it like this: if you did want better relationships, you wouldn't get into them. Usually, the last person hurt you. You take some time, then eventually you start dating again, or you remarry, or whatever. So clearly, we want new relationships. But the problem is, our memory's been so damaged by what happened that we go into the new thing like that bad fruit, and we go into it and spoil our tomorrow. And I work with so many people where the main thing that I found that it's not the relationship or the dreams of where the relationship can go is the problem. The problem is our infected memories won't let our tomorrow live. And so, and that's why I feel like what happens is I had to be careful in that, where I felt let down by the way these companies, handle things and the investment, so and so forth, to where it sometimes feel like, man, every time, this and that. But I say, okay, the thing I had to say is, I got to be careful. How do I not process this where it doesn't make me bitter, but it makes me better? And I think that's where the plan of the enemy is. He wants to find ways to where eventually we become bitter. So I feel like he does his work in the beginning to hopefully put us on autopilot, where once he's got it to a place of bitterness, then now we just go and we just spoil everything that we do moving forward. So yes, it's the enemy at work, but the enemy, all he did was we just gave ourselves over to not processing the right way. We got bitter, and he says, now you can go to your future relationships like that spoiled fruit and infect any new thing you want to do. All because I don't know how to properly process what I've been through. And I really see that as a common thread, no matter what it is in what context. Whether you want to go into a new business, starting a lot of times I've seen people who've been burnt by business partners where they don't even start a new business. They don't even start again. They just stop and they just accept the status quo. Or they got hurt and they've been through a couple of marriages. I'm just not getting married no more. I'm done. Or they've been hurt by friends. I'm just not going to have any friends. I'm just going to stay by my. So in other words, it's at a point where I just shut down, and where and I get it, because a lot of times what we've been through sometimes just, can be more real than what a tomorrow can look like, because I experienced it. And that's why we have to understand that the love of God has to go beyond all knowledge, meaning that I have to make sure that I don't put my tomorrow in my experiences. One thing I've learned about most dreamers and innovators who create things, they process their situation right. Like I said, Thomas Edison, I believe, was the one. Or maybe my wife told me something else. Anyway, who created the whole light bulb thing. But this one thing he said. He said, they asked him, they said, did you fail 1,000 times? He said, no. He said, it took me 1,000 times to figure out what didn't work so I could figure out what did work. So in other words, he didn't take his losses as a setback. He took his losses as a way of growing and getting better. And one thing is that I feel like what happens with us is that we never take our experiences to properly learn. A lot of times we learn the wrong thing, meaning that we when we don't learn the right way, our situations become our prison instead of our university. And that's what Thomas Edison is pretty much saying. Let your failures become your university, don't let it become your prison. And usually when we don't process things the right way, our experiences can become our prison, where it locks us up emotionally and mentally. All the while, I'm trying to go out and create new relationships, all because I didn't know how to allow these previous things to be a way where I can grow and get better for my next situation. By where now I make it as an expectation that it will happen again. It became my prison, and so now I'm out here trying to outwork this not happen to me again versus dreaming that me learning something better where I can grow and be better for, because again, God said all things work together for my good. What does that mean? That means that even in that we may not see it in the moment, but that thing, if I can take the right approach, it can help me move forward even stronger. So I'm going to read this to you out of Hebrews verses 12, chapter 12, verse 15. Um, it says, looking carefully lest anyone fall short of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up causes trouble, and this and by this many become defiled. So this is what happens when I don't properly process my yesterday. So let me say this: when we say properly process my yesterday, what does that mean? That means that I'm looking at my situation through God's eyes, not my experienced eyes, not through other people's eyes. I'm looking at my situation through God's eyes, through God's point of view. That's what I mean by properly processed. Because again, we're talking from a believer's standpoint. We're not talking about it from a world or manly standpoint. We're talking about from a believer standpoint. I got to look at my situation through God's eyes, not man's eyes, not through my experience eyes, not through how they treated me eyes. I got to look at it through God's eyes to properly process. So when I don't process it right, then the temptation is to be bitter. So I give you an example of what I'm talking about, where Jesus said, after he did nothing wrong, but they beat him, they ostracized him, and Judas is the one that betrayed him, that actually turned him over to open him up to turn him over to his enemies to get him on the cross. Even though Jesus laid his life down, but there were people who had a hand in making sure that happened. And also another Bible said in the books, it talks about how the Pharisees, they planned, like they actually had meetings on how they were going to get Jesus on that cross. Now, just think about somebody actually planning your demise intentionally. How you think you would feel? Right? I mean, and again, Jesus didn't take like a natural beating. I mean, if you really read, I mean, this guy took a beating of the ages, where his skin was ripped from his body, stabbed in the side. They said to the point where he didn't even look human, ripped his beard off, all because, from a natural standpoint, the Pharisees didn't like what he was saying, and so they put plan to get him, and they actually got Judas to sell him out for 30 pieces of silver, tell him where he's at, and get locked up the whole nine. And then Jesus gets on the cross and says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Now, I've talked to a lot of people. They say they know exactly what they did. They know exactly, what they were doing when they was doing it. They meant to hurt me. They meant to do this and all that. See, what I'm saying is that Jesus looked at the situation through God's eyes, understanding that the enemy was at work through the way they were processing. Whereas, from the natural standpoint, Jesus could have been like, God, get them. They knew exactly what they were doing. They planned meetings, they had everything, this and that, whatever. But what did Jesus say? Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And so I would say one of the first things that we're going to have to understand and make sure that we don't become bitter, because Jesus was saying this. I just went through a serious betrayal and a beating and hell on earth. He said, but if I plan on getting up in 3 days, I gotta make sure I go through the hell, but the hell don't get in me, so I can be able to move to where my mind is going and not let my mind get trapped in what I've been through. And that's really understanding that the number one, spiritually, we realize that the enemy been trying to trap me and set me up and keep my mind stuck in the hurt, versus understanding that, yeah, the people may have plotted and they did it, but you have to wrestle against flesh and blood, principalities and powers, meaning that you got to understand that the enemy's job is to take what they're doing, common sense, and to use it to make you stay stuck in your bitterness. Because it's almost like, you know what you did, but remember, that's how the enemy wants you to think. So that way you never move forward. And that's why Jesus said, forgive them for they know not what they, yes, they knew exactly what they were doing. But from God's standpoint, he knew that there was still a level of spiritual ignorance going on by where the enemy was able to use that to capitalize, because the whole goal is if I can get Jesus bitter, he'll never get up in 3 days. So his goal was, and so what is bitterness? Meaning that what you went through got in you, because I didn't understand that that was the whole plan of the enemy in the first time, in the first point. So realizing once you and I'm saying me saying this doesn't make it any easier, but at least I know that the enemy thinks enough of me to know that if I can just get you bitter from what you've been through, get it in you, you'll never accomplish your purpose. So apparently he must fear you enough to try to get your issue in you to where you can never see your tomorrow. So that's all for this week. We'll pick it up next week, and have a blessed week. I'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining Pastor Wayne Powell Sr. for this edition of Relationship Wednesday. We hope you enjoyed this episode of After I Did. Let's keep the conversation going by leaving your questions and comments in the chat. We also invite you to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you are reminded to join us next Wednesday as Pastor Wayne continues this discussion of After I Did.